Ms. Fink, did you have any thinking around this?
I feel like the compromises to a large extent have been made, and I do believe that Sound Exchange would be willing to sit down and have more conversations. I completely don't understand why we went through this for a year and a half to have, a bill come up saying, let's forget it, that it happened. And I would urge the small webcasters to sit down and talk more with Sound Exchange, because I believe that there is a dialogue that's been offered that should be more fully discussed.
Mr. Eisworth,
I
Public
appreciate
Radio.
Yes, thank you very much. To beat a metaphor to death, on a nice hot day when everybody else wants lemonade, I'm from Cincinnati, so I have to say this, some people want beer. And the point of, this is stretching a bit beyond credulity, but the point of public broadcasting, we've got to remember, as mandated by Congress, is to provide service to underserved audiences. We are here to look at those people and serve those people who mainstream media, internet, broadcast, satellite, whatever, tend to overlook. Were it not for public radio, there would not be local stations in many communities. Were it not for public radio, there wouldn't be news, local news. Were it not for public radio, a lot of communities wouldn't have access to jazz or classical music, whether it's over the broadcast or over the internet. Congress recognized the value of having a wide variety of cultural entertainment and education available, and that's why public radio and public broadcasting was formed. We have, from our institution, from the inauguration of service, always, as an industry, been on the side of artists and performers, have mandated and have pursued interests and contracts to make sure that they're paid. The people who create the product are paid and recognized, because without them, as has been pointed out, we don't have a business. We have a partnership with performers. We want to see that partnership continue. However, at the same time, we've got to remind this committee, and we have to remind the audience, that our core mission is that it is service. And we need to be looked at differently than the commercial marketplace. We are more than willing, and have in the past, paid our own way in terms of music rights and royalties. We certainly would entertain and be willing to discuss a proposal where stations would be charged a flat fee. But the idea that there would be a moving target or a cap initially with negotiations further down the line does nothing but to confuse, obfuscate, and make more difficult our budgetary planning, because every dollar we use to pay for a fee to Sound Exchange or someone else has to come out of another public service initiative, whether it's our news efforts or the broadcast operation of our transmitters or education that stations that are financially strapped to begin with have to sacrifice. And we're simply asking that while this discussion may continue and while it may progress in the commercial marketplace, public broadcasting, by nature of our mission, by nature of our very being, needs to be considered separately, because we have a unique service and a unique set of problems. That's all we're asking.
And it is considered separately.
In closing, Mr. Lee, would you add your comments?
Thank you. It's important to understand that a CARP, which was prior to a CRB, was way too expensive, and folks sitting here at this table couldn't afford the cost to be part of a CARP. So everyone felt that a CRB would be more equitable. I think probably everyone at this table, because that cost would not be incurred by the participants. There were 13,000 pages of testimony. The CRB had access to financial information that we don't have. They had access to that. But I just want to make sure that there is a clear understanding that Sound Exchange is attempting to resolve the differences with the 5%, those that would be paying 5% of the revenue, because we understand that perhaps in the CRB procedure there may have been a flaw, and that flaw needs to be corrected. Just for example, 80% of the public radio stations will pay $500 annually and nothing more. Sound Exchange has offered the non-commercial webcasters, that is college radio, community broadcasting, religious broadcasting, the same rate that was set in 2003. No increase whatsoever, the same rate. If there are other discussions that need to take place, they are ongoing here. This is probably not the place for us to be negotiating back and forth, but I just want everybody to understand, as a member of Sound Exchange, the AFM would do everything to encourage Sound Exchange, and I think the other artists, to ensure that small webcasters are able to continue in business. It's a win-win for all of us, as far as I'm concerned, and to ensure that whatever rate is agreed upon, that it will be recognition of the value that musicians bring to this event. And I think that's a win-win as well. I don't think anybody on this panel would disagree with that. So I believe that the 5% of the revenue that will be coming in from the small webcasters can be resolved. And if we throw out the whole thing, we'd be throwing out the baby with the bathwater. Thank you.
If I may just add one thing, he's absolutely correct. I don't know the percentage of the number of public radio stations that would be paying the $500 per stream. However, as we understand it, and as the Sound Exchange maintains, that's a floor. That's the basic. What it does is sets the floor that will discourage stations from growing the service, because anything they grow beyond the arbitrary limit that the Sound Exchange has set, we will have to pay a greater fee. In other words, we're penalized for successful public service, and that's what we're concerned about.
First, Ms. Finks, you had mentioned briefly about healthcare being a big problem for small businesses. Let me just say, I know when I go to the small businesses around my community, that's one of the top, if not the top, concern that they have, the high cost, and that it's been escalating so much. And to the chairwoman's credit, we've had hearings on that in this committee, trying to find ways to deal with that problem, things like association health plans, allowing small business folks to pool their resources together so that they can negotiate with the insurance companies who otherwise have much more power, and trying to do away with some of the frivolous medical malpractice lawsuits, for example. And we've introduced a bill for Healthcare Affordability Act, which would allow small businesses, for example, to fully deduct all their premiums and individuals to do the same. But in any event, so I agree with you, that is a problem, and we are trying to deal with it to some degree. But let me ask a question that's totally unrelated to that. Is there a dynamic here that is more or less a competition or the challenge between established artists, more established artists like yourself? You're a Grammy winner and well known in the industry, versus the newer upcoming folks who may not be as well known, maybe a little more niche, and their audience may be as well. Mr. Alcorn and maybe some other folks. Is that one of the issues that in reality that we're dealing with here? And I'd ask Mr. Alcorn this.
Well, I think it's portrayed as one of the issues, but I was that person 30 years ago. And, I appreciate the recognition that you all have given me, but probably most of you never heard of Kathy Fink and Marcy Marxer before Congressman Van Hollen introduced us, which is just a significant fact that we are hardworking musicians making a living, winning Grammys, being nominated for Grammys, and still living under the radar when it comes to the world of music and big bucks. And so in some ways I still put myself in the same category as those people. I am both an advocate and a mentor to many, many, many new artists. As a volunteer, I spend an average of 4 to 5 hours a week on the phone as a mentor to new artists. And amongst the things that I advise them in their new venture is trying to make a living doing what they're doing, not make it big, which is obviously not something I have a lot of experience with, but just how to make a living, how to build a solid business, are being involved with organizations like the American Federation of Musicians that I've belonged to since 1974, Sound Exchange I've belonged to since it started, all these different organizations that are set up to help them figure out how to best take advantage of the variety of income streams that are available to them. And I I honestly feel that in many ways I'm in the same boat as they are, just with more experience how to make the system work.